When I'm here, they all wanna see me like this. No matter. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into my channel. I'm going to ask that you go ahead and subscribe so you won't miss anything that's happening over here. Today we're going to sit down and talk to co-pastor and First Lady Vanetta Walker. We're hearing her husband Ryan Walker, pastor, House of Refuge International in Chicopee, Massachusetts. I'm going to ask that you stay to the very end because this is going to be good. Comment, rate, and subscribe. Thank you again and stay tuned.
Our ministry started in October of 2005, so this year will be 13 years for us.
Tell us what has been like the most rewarding being First Lady.
The most rewarding, I'd have to say, not only watching my growth, but also watching those that have been a part of the ministry, watching them grow into various roles and stepping into their purpose. It's been the most rewarding.
What have been the most challenging moments?
Probably my growth. That probably was the most challenging thing for me because I didn't want to let go of me and stepping into a role with a title and having to do certain things and be certain ways according to people's standards. So that was the biggest struggle, living up to people's expectation of me.
Do you find it easier now?
Not necessarily easier. I would probably say that I've adapted more to it, and it has to be most recent years. I want to say 2016 was when I finally accepted. I mean, it was a process, but 2016 was the definition of my yes.
What changed that?
I went to a women's conference in Florida. Technically, I wasn't supposed to be there. I just mentioned I wanted to go, but the finances weren't available at the time. And one of the ladies in this church overheard me saying that I wanted to go, and my husband texted me while I was at work and said, "You're going to Florida." I'm like, "How? What did you do?" And he told me what happened. So I knew that I had to be there. I didn't know what was going to take place when I got there. And it was during the service that the message was being delivered. Part of the message really resonated with me. And at the end of service, I could not get up. Like I was laid out on the floor for probably an hour. And, you know, the Lord was just dealing with me. And the only time that I got relief was when I finally said yes. I surrendered. And it wasn't a surrender of, me turning away from a life of sin, because that wasn't my issue. Truthfully speaking, my issue was just rebellion to the call. And it's hard to say even now, but that's the truth of what I experienced. It was part of my journey. I don't want shy is. I would probably more say I had selective shyness. When it came to certain things, like for example, when I was in school, very boisterous, outgoing, always getting kicked out of class and things of that nature. So, in that aspect, in my comfort element, I wasn't shy. But then when it came to doing certain things outside of my area of comfort, I would be very reluctant. So I defined it as shy. I think it was more just reluctant because of discomfort.
You have children. How many children?
I have 3.
3.
And that whole process was something else too. Jaden, my husband and I, we got married at a very young age. I was 21, he was 23. And for 4.5 years, we tried to have a baby, and it just didn't happen. The year before he showed up, because we kept hearing, "Oh, it'll happen, and nothing. I went to a women's conference. These women conferences hit me. Went to a women's conference, and the speaker there said, without even knowing me, she didn't know we were trying or anything. She said, you're gonna have a baby. And I laughed. I was Sarah. I got back home, and a couple months later, a young man came to me and said, you're gonna have a son. And I said, I heard that a couple months ago. I ain't seen nothing yet. So my husband had a dream. He had a dream of me painting a vacant room blue. And so he was like, okay. And he saw the curtains were blue and everything. He didn't say anything to me because he knew how traumatizing it was for me every month to know that my child had manifested. That August, our first lady at the time called me out, and she laid my hand on me and specifically said, and she shall bring forth a son. And she said that must have been 5 times over and over. And I still didn't accept it. I was still in denial. Finally, I was just sleeping all the time. He looked at me, he says, something's up. And he knew before I knew. And my first son was born, my only son was born. Then I thought I was fine. I was like, oh, it's gonna take forever. 3 months later, I was pregnant again with my daughter. She was born in 2004. We pretty much said we were done, and then I kind of got the itch again. And I changed my mind. My husband was like, no, we're all set. We don't need any more. And I was getting ready to have a procedure. Found out I was pregnant again 8 years later with my Jazzy, who's my baby, pride and joy. So, yeah, 3 children.
Were they here when you started the ministry?
When I started the ministry, Riel and Jada were both here.
What was that like, raising them up?
Very rough, because the first years, we were renting a place. And at the time, we didn't have full authority over the place. So we would have to break down and set up. With it being a startup church, we were placed in pretty much everything. We were the janitors, we were the cleanup crew, we were the setup crew, we were the praise and worship team. I was the praise and worship team. We didn't have no musicians. We had instruments, but we had no musicians, and we kept setting everything. My husband would set up the entire service, put the chairs out, turn the heat on. Actually, we had to clean the place out because it was a hall, and sometimes we would have to clean up the mess before after the party because the maintenance crew never cleaned it up. So we had to clean that up, set that up. I'm home with the babies. I didn't do all this. My husband did. Drove, cleaned up the church, set up the church, came back home, showered, picked up the people in the church van, dropped them, brought them all to church. Turn around and preach, turn back around, break down everything, and pack it up and went home.
My God.
For 3 years we did that.
Oh, wow.
It was rough, and one day he's like, God, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And he said that in his prayer time. That weekend, the Saturday, one of the ladies, it was moved upon her heart. She said, Pastor, no more. You're not doing this anymore. We got you. We call them the ecclesia.
Yeah.
And they every Saturday or early Sunday, if they had a function, they got up every morning and took care of all that for us. So that was a blessing.
Yeah. And how long before you moved into where you are now?
We just moved in October 31st of 2017. Nope. Yes, 2017.
And how's that been? Much different, I'm sure.
Much different.
Yeah.
Much different. Because now, if anything breaks, we gotta fix it. We can't call nobody anymore.
Right.
If when it snows, we gotta take care of the plow and things of that nature. I mean, there's nothing like ownership, but at the same time, it comes with a lot of responsibilities.
What would you say is your area of attention? Like, what area in ministry would you like to just focus on?
I love them all.
Yeah.
And right now, I know I am kind of spread thin. I really can't say right now because my heart, there's strings attached to every area. In my heart right now, I'm dealing with praise and worship. I have the women's ministry. the youth ministry. So I just recently really started operating, fully functioning in the women's ministry. It was a little intimidating for me because I deal with a lot of women that are definitely anointed, and I would say beyond my grade according to what I say, but I understand that it's a responsibility that I have to take, and it's not about who I'm ministering to, it's about who appointed me to them. And it has been said several times, you blessed me, and it definitely wasn't me, because if it was up to me, I'd give them the mic, you know. So I love all aspects of the ministries that I'm over.
How important do you find it to create your own identity? Do you find it important? Would you like to be called Mrs. Ryan? Or Mrs. Walker, Mrs. Ryan Walker?
I had a rough time owning a title. I didn't like it. Even now, it's something that I struggle with. And it was, some of the elders in the church was like, you can't allow people to just call you V, or you need to put something before your name. All right, Sister V, or some of the kids, they call me Auntie, some they call me Miss Vanetta. And I don't mind any of those. Before, it didn't bother me if someone just called me, hey, Vanetta. Now I cringe. That came with time. I feel like the reason that didn't happen until I owned who I was. And again, that was the summer of 16 when I finally said yes. One of the things that I told God is, and I told a lot of people, like, it was probably said in rebellion, ain't nobody gonna change me. God himself would have to come down and change me. I'm also gonna be me. And I realized that because of where God positioned me, that there's certain aspects of who I was that I couldn't carry with me in the calling that is on my life. So while he was changing me, I felt like he still allowed facets of me to shine through, but then there was a side of me that said, hey V, you gotta grow up and own it. So that's where I am. I'm kind of learning that, I'm learning my voice. So I'm not just pastor's wife. I'm not just first lady. I'm not just Mrs. Ryan Walker. I'm first lady co-pastor Vanetta Walker, and I'm learning to own that. So I do have my voice.
What was that transition like to be co-pastor?
Like, that all happened again, summer of 16. A lot of people would call, hey, co-pastor, don't call me that. And honestly, I think the hardest part of it was because I wasn't prepared for it. There's nothing that anyone could have ever done to prepare me for it. I don't care how many classes I took. I don't care how much training I went to. I wasn't prepared for it because I didn't want it. I didn't want it. I've seen what leaders go through. I didn't want nothing to do with it. And it was that summer where he kept saying, it's not about you. Because of the assignment and the calling that I had on my life, he said, it's about them. And so accepting it was hard because I didn't want to. But walking it out now, I realize it's something I have to do. And I still struggle with it. Every time I'm called on, I struggle with it. I get nervous every single time, and I'm like, God, when is this gonna go away? And I spoke to my godfather about it, and he said, you don't ever want that to go away, because that's when you just develop self-confidence and stop trusting in God to speak through you. And so I've learned to deal with the nervousness and learned to deal with the discomfort, because I recognize that it's not about me. And the only way that I can minister to them is when I stop relying on me and trust the one who called me.
I've heard people say First Lady is not a calling. What is your opinion on that?
We are called to be a helpmeet. And that's in any marriage role. So whatever the husband is called to, the wife is called to. So if he called the husband, then he called us to assist with the assignment that is on his life. And I truly feel that a wife First Lady, Mrs., whatever you want to call her, can make or break a ministry. They held a huge responsibility, and no matter what, whether they want to own the title or responsibility or not, the moment that you become his missus, they're looking for something from us. And there's no bigger frustration than trying to get water out of a rock. They get frustrated, and I also think that there comes a time when, when you understand that your husband is being pulled down in so many directions, there's a pulling on your heart too. If you really love him, there's a pulling on your heart too. And my husband, our ministry is just like full of women. So I was like, all right, I need to own my role, because, yeah, I'm going to need to own that. So yeah, I made sure that I stepped up to the plate and let them know it's a two for one. You get him, you get me. So I'm gonna stand by him, and it is. I indeed see that it is a calling. He's trying to minister to the people. We can cut them up, and he's got to bandage them up, and it's just like a tug of war. It makes ministry so much harder for the man of God when you're not one. So yes, when he's called, you're called.
What would you say to a new First Lady?
December, I was in prayer, and Hannah came to my spirit. And Hannah was Elkanah's wife, and all you could hear is about Elkanah, and then of course Hannah comes into the picture, but nobody was hearing Hannah. And so what I would say to every First Lady, upcoming First Lady, there's no manual for it. There's no training for it. And the most we can do is give you advice based on our experiences. But you're dealing with people that we haven't dealt with. You have a voice. And because you are Hannah, you have an audience with God. And when people don't understand you, he hears your cry. So when the priest thought she was drunk, God heard her cry and responded to her cry, even though the priest misunderstood and misinterpreted her actions. I speak to every Hannah, First Lady, you have a voice, use it. Seek God. Ask him for direction. Ask him how do I deal with these people? Ask him, what area do you want me to focus on? And in that area, my main prayer is Solomon's prayer when he said wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I would probably say that there may not have been enough support on the husband's side to encourage her. And if that's what she felt, ask for help. What do you want me to do? How can I help you? How can I make this better? How can we work together to make this better before walking away? And as it pertains to, it's not easy dealing with us ladies. We're not easy people to deal with. So I know when them daggers start coming and it's back to back, you haven't healed from one wound and another dagger comes, it's just like, when do I have time to come up for air and recover? Before you walk away, I would say take some time out and seek God. Just you and God. And I would also say seek wise counsel. Don't go through this on your own. You've had to gone through a lot to have to arrive at this decision to walk away. And if that's the case, I would definitely, again, seek wise counsel, not your girlfriend, not your boo, not your ace. No, you need somebody that's going to give you spiritual wisdom in the areas that you're struggling with. You got to be upfront and honest and say what you're feeling. Like, be upfront and honest. Say what you're feeling. Don't sugarcoat. Don't beat around the bush. Come direct and say, this is what I'm dealing with. Help me. And I would probably relax responsibilities before I give up responsibilities. Take a couple months off and have people intercede on your behalf. Don't just walk away.
I know I'm laughing, times I feel I'm crashing, but I gotta keep on this masking. Never let you know I'm gasping for air, so I let you see me smiling, even though I feel like crying.